It's time to transform your health with one of the nation's leading and growing authorities in total health. Over the next hour, learn from experts on how to revolutionize the health of those you love most. This is Ask Dr. Ernst. And now, here's your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst.
Well, hello, this is the Ask Dr. Ernst show, where pounds are shed, disease is dead, and where you can be set free from all of your health problems. I'm your host today, Dr. Aaron Ernst, here to inspire you, coach you, and guide you to living life to your full health potential. Hey, this is your Health Hour, and yes, it is a web broadcast today. We have our show pre-recorded because, again, we have a football game that has preempted our regular live broadcast. Not a big deal. We, of course, want to support our local teams, and we also want to support your health. So if you're struggling with something like heart disease, high blood pressure, cancer, diabetes, maybe you want to lose some weight, I'm here to help you gain victory over your health conditions with simple and effective and easy action steps that I promise you anybody can implement. If you'd like more information about just who we are and what we do and the therapies we provide and offer through our nutritional coaching, advice, and information, just visit AskDrErnst.com. We also have health tips, recipes, even some additional resources and free downloads available on our site. And again, it's Ask Dr. Ernst. That's AskDrErnst.com. I'm your host, Dr. Aaron Ernst. Thank you for joining us today. And because it again is a web broadcast, not only can you hear me, but you should be able to see on your screen some various videos and also even some photos that will help to correlate and help you see what I'm talking about. And in fact, some of our web broadcasts are exploding on the internet. And I think this one's going to because it touches into a topic that affects so many of us, and yet many of us have probably never heard of this. We've never dealt with it, and it's the concept known as leaky gut. And, when we talk about inflammatory bowel issues or digestive issues, I think too many times we often think, oh gosh, this is going to be a disgusting show. We're going to be talking about stool and diarrhea and just all that nastiness. No. We're talking more about a condition of inflammation in the intestine, some potential damage, and a leak, which I'll describe, not of liquids or stool or anything to that effect, but of certain proteins and enzymes, toxins, bacteria back into the bloodstream that then can cause massive health issues. And leaky gut syndrome is something that is rapidly growing to the point where it's been estimated that several million people, sometimes into the 2 to 3 million range, are struggling with it and don't even know it. And so you might say, well, what kind of things develop if I have potentially this leaky gut? And so I'm going to give you a list. You should be able to see this on your screen, but if you've ever dealt with being bloated or had food sensitivities, or you've currently been diagnosed with some sort of thyroid condition, it could be Hashimoto's thyroiditis or a hypothyroid or some sort of underactive thyroid, or you're tired all the time, your joints ache, you get headaches frequently, you have skin issues like rosacea, acne, psoriasis, you have digestive problems, difficulty where it's either constipation, diarrhea, or both, back and forth, bloating, gas, etc., weight gain, or even things into the respects of like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood sugar. Those are the classic symptoms and the progression of how a leaky gut can develop. And I know what you might be saying, wait a second, don't we all have these conditions or these issues at some point in our life? Yes, if they're transient, if they come and go. But if you're someone who's chronically dealing with, again, food sensitivities, which would be like an allergy, or I'm sensitive to wheat or rice or corn. When I eat it, I get a headache, or when I eat it, my back hurts. Or you've got this, thyroid problem, or again, fatigue and joint pain, where it's consistent and all the time and it's not going away and you've not gotten any result by following your standard medical care, you may actually have a leaky gut. So today what we're going to do is we're going to digest, how'd you like that? Digest a leaky gut syndrome into what it is and, more importantly, what it does and how to fix it naturally. Because, of course, if you're listening to my show, you know that you're probably here because you're looking for some sort of a natural solution for your health, or you're a health advocate and you're just constantly trying to expand your knowledge. And that's what I'm going to do today, teach you about a condition that affects so many of us, yet so many people don't even know it exists. And even a lot of the medical community, there's a little bit of I'll call it, does it really truly exist in regards to, say, your traditional gastroenterology or your traditional medical community. You know, they might say, oh, leaky gut is just a colloquial term, doesn't actually exist. But here's the thing. If you were to look into it medically, they'll term it an increased intestinal permeability. And so that would be the diagnostic term. But what you have to understand with leaky gut is it basically means this. Your intestines are sort of like a tube, like your skin. So it goes from your mouth to, your anus. And that tube is designed to let certain things in and let certain things out, just like your skin. It lets certain things through and it doesn't let certain things get in. And so if we cause damage to the inner lining of our intestines, which, by the way, can be the esophagus, the stomach, the small bowel, the large bowel, then we can start to develop little tiny, extremely microscopic holes that can allow the substances to pass through the lining that shouldn't and allow certain things that should stay in your body to come back out. So your gut lining works as a barrier to keep larger particles that would naturally damage you out of your body and to allow you to pass toxins and other things so that you stay healthy and stay well. So when somebody has a leaky gut, which again medically would be called an increased intestinal permeability, you get the net effect of having digestive damage, maybe even to the degree of ulcers or inflammation or something to that effect, which will eventually cause more holes to develop or further expression of the leak into the intestines. And then that allows even more toxins and viruses and food particles and medications and things to that effect through, which ultimately spikes an immune response. Now, Dr. Josh Axe is probably one of the most foremost experts in leaky gut, and he has a very great visual graphic that you guys are probably seeing right now, which shows how there's a various degree of stress, toxins, food particles, medications, pathogens, and organ dysfunction that can cause the inflammation and irritation within the intestines that leads to the cells spreading apart. And so when you think about it, if two cells are really tightly bound close to each other, they're tight and nothing can pass through. But as those cells separate, just like a filter, they start to open up small microscopic holes, and we get all those things. We get the stress in our life, we get the toxins, the food particles, the medications that we're taking because of the conditions we have due to this leaky gut, viruses and bacteria, and even improper organic functions can lead to this. And so then what we start to see is food intolerance and immune system issues, and ultimately the worst of them all, which is autoimmunity. And so that's why we see things like bloating and sensitivity, thyroid conditions, fatigue, joint pains, headaches, digestive issues, and the sort. Now, the bigger challenge behind leaky gut is it is the root cause of most health issues. Some experts will even say upwards in the neighborhood of 70 to 80, even 90% of most people's health problems may have a root cause of leaky gut. And what I mean by that is we know now scientifically that increased intestinal permeability, or a leaky gut, has been directly connected to conditions like depression and anxiety and ADHD and acne and rosacea and eczema, psoriasis. I mean, this list goes on and on and on. All forms of Hashimoto's, all forms of hypothyroid, almost all forms of Graves' disease, which will be every form of a thyroid condition, even to things like adrenal fatigue and rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, headaches, sinus conditions, sensitivities to allergies, even food products. So we look at this sort of whole wheel of health, and we come back to the central spoke, and we find what it is it's your gut. And so we now know today, thanks to lots of research and even scientists who have studied this, that the majority of your immune system, somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 80% of the immune system power you have, which is your natural ability to fight illness, sickness, to reverse conditions chronically, and even to help yourself heal, come from the immune system's power, which comes from your gut. And so if you're having those warning signs, again, bloating, food sensitivities, thyroid conditions, diagnosed thyroid problems, fatigue, joint pain, headaches, digestive issues, weight gain, despite you exercising and changing your diet, then there's a very high likelihood that you have a leaky gut. So when we look at the degree of what causes a leaky gut, we know that it's some version of damage to the intestines. And the typical classic pattern would be, of course, your diet or a toxic overload because of consuming or using products that have toxins in them, or believe it or not, exposure to antibiotics or other forms of medications, either currently or because of your past. And believe it or not, some of the most common sources of damage to the intestines that I see when I coach and consult with clients, or that we see just historically across looking at various studies and clinical cases and things to that effect, is because we grew up, most of us, in the antibiotic era, which I would term the time frame when we used to throw an antibiotic at everything. So maybe you're like me and you remember when you were a child that the moment you had a cough, it was straight to the doctor, home with that, pink, amoxicillin solution that you would just take whenever you had a sickness. Or, you would have something simple like a sore throat and they'd throw a Z-Pack at you and also some antibiotics, so steroids and antibiotics. Or, you had a subtle infection, maybe your throat was a little scratchy. Rather than swabbing it to find out if it actually was bacteria, if it was a strep, they would just say, well, look, in case it is, just take this antibiotic. If it's a virus, then the antibiotic's not going to do anything. It's not going to hurt you. Just go ahead and take the antibiotic. We used to live in a society where antibiotics were like the mainstream sort of first-line therapy. If you could kill the bacteria, then you'd supposedly be healthy. And here we are, 20, 30, 40 years later, and we realized, wow, we've really caused some major issues. Not only have we led to antibiotic resistance in certain strains, but we massively wiped out the naturally occurring bacteria in the intestines, in the skin, in the lungs, causing a lot of the leaky gut issues that we now see today. And antibiotic use and exposure to antibiotics doesn't just come from you taking an antibiotic currently or in the past. Believe it or not, I've had a lot of clients who say to me, well, how can I have this antibiotic sourced, because we can test for it, but an antibiotic sourced leaky gut when I've never taken an antibiotic in my life? And then I look at them and I say, well, wait a second. I see here that you consume beverage dairy products. I see that you eat conventional meats, from your classic grocery stores. And I see here that, you've been doing this for probably almost your whole life. So did you realize that a lot of those products, those animals, were given antibiotics? And if you take an antibiotic into an animal and then you slaughter it, or you milk it, or you drink the bodily fluids of it, then of course we can have antibiotics in those products. And so you might think you're not taking an antibiotic, but in fact you're eating them or drinking them in the foods that you're consuming. So we all know today that it's not a good idea to massively pounce your body with antibiotics, but if you're in that culture where you grew up taking an antibiotic for everything, there is a very high likelihood that you may have a digestive issue known as increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut that may be causing your current health issues. And I promise you one thing, if you fix your gut, you can fix your health. And I'll say that again, if you fix your intestines, you can fix your health. Partly because when those mucosal membrane cells, or when the small cells of your intestines become inflamed and irritated and they spread apart, you now start to get toxins, microorganisms, food particles, even invasion of food particles that act like viruses and bacteria, gluten, for example, into the bloodstream, which can spike a response by the body as if those products are abnormal and foreign, which of course toxins and bacteria and viruses are. But if a food product in its microscopic elements gets across the membrane back into the blood, your body will see that food particle and say, wait a second, this is a foreign object, and it will start to build an immune response against it. Now, you can have what's known as an IgG immune response. You can have an IgA reaction, and that will start to stimulate the B cells and T cells of the immune system, and that's what starts to spike a systemic inflammatory response. It starts to spike autoimmunity, and it starts to destroy your health by allowing viruses and bacteria back into the body, which they should be normally expelled through your stools the way we would normally expect it. So what we now know today is that one of the biggest irritants to the intestines is antibiotic use. The second biggest irritant to the intestines is medication use. And this is the trick. If you're taking a medication because you have some sort of a health issue, again, like thyroid problems or high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, MS, Parkinson's, cancer, whatever you're taking this drug for, digestive issues, acid reflux, etc., chances are it's because there was damage to your intestines in the first place, which led you to have your current condition, but now you're taking a medication to try to fix those symptoms, which further irritates the intestines, causing more permeability, leading to a greater leaky gut, which then fuels your current condition. And can you guys see why it's so hard for us to sometimes get out of that health tornado? We get sucked into it and we think the medications are going to fix us, when in fact they may actually be creating the current condition that you have and making it worse. So the one thing I also see that causes a lot of irritation to the intestine, of course, is gluten. And it's really few and far between that we host a show that I'm not talking about sugar and I'm not talking about wheat, because, guys, those two, if I had to pick foods that are killing us on a regular basis, it's sugar consumption and grain consumptions, specifically the gluten found in the grains. And here's what some current scientific research is showing. When you consume gluten, it's an individual portion of protein that's found in the grains of either rice, corn, wheat, soy, oats, barley, etc. When you consume that gluten protein, it is not really broken down into anything other than the individual protein. And as it passes through your stool, it can bind to some specific receptors on the cells of the membrane in your intestine. And since you can see this, I'm so glad it's actually web broadcasted today, because for me to describe this to you verbally is very complicated, but you'll see the slide I'm talking about right here. Gluten lands onto the cell in the intestine, and it spikes a protein to be produced by the cell called zonulin. And without getting too deep into this, zonulin can actually bind to the neighboring cell and irritate the tight junctions that keep the cells together. And what happens then is the cells sort of repel, they push apart. There's that microscopic hole. That's what's called leaky gut. And then the gluten can actually get through that back into the blood. And inside the bloodstream, it spikes an autoimmune response as if gluten was a virus, releasing cytokines and other toxic chemicals that will further irritate, attack, and destroy. And like any immune response, when your body finds a viral particle, a bacterial particle, or a toxin, it will digest it down and express small pieces of that so that your immune response can look for more of that and destroy it. So gluten actually gets digested, pushed out to some of our immune cells, and expressed as an antigen response so that your body says, fine, I will build an immune response against gluten. And that leads to autoimmunity, and that leads to chronic systemic inflammation. So if you're the type of person who says, well, listen, when I eat pizza, I get a headache, or when I eat, a cracker, my back hurts, or, every time I have some sort of wheat pasta, lasagna, spaghetti, whatever, the next day or two, my knees are killing me. What you're doing is you're chronically irritating an already activated autoimmunity against gluten. And most of us just think, well, I'll just take an aspirin, Advil, Tylenol, and deal with the pain. Or, if my nose is running, I'll just pop some sort of over-the-counter, allergy medication. And that's what I want you to stop doing, because that's going to only make it worse. Because, again, medications and irritations to the intestines will further this process, making the leaky gut more damaging to your body. We also know that chronic stress can irritate the gut. What happens is if you're chronically stressed out, over time, your immune system can become depleted, which again is found in the intestines. And as you kill off your immune system in the intestine, you can't fight the invaders that are chronically in the gut, viruses and bacteria, molds and funguses, and all sorts of things, leading to further irritation to the intestines. So many times, if we can just address where your stress is coming from and try to deal with that, then we can start to see the gut start to heal. Now, the challenge with dealing with our stresses today is many of us just get stressed out when a text shows up on our phone from somebody that we don't like, or when our boss is hounding down our necks because, we're late with some project, or when there's traffic and everybody's looking at, the backhoes and the dump trucks going, why are we rubbernecking to this when we should be driving straight? We get irritated, we get frustrated. And if you're the type of person where stress can drive a response in your body, it can actually cause damaging effects to your system. So I don't know what kind of stressors you have, but for me, meditating on some scripture, or finding some time to meditate by myself, or hanging out with people that I enjoy, or, maybe taking some time for myself can be really, really helpful for helping to heal an intestine. So can decreasing our toxic exposure. Now, if we look at this, today, most of us are bathed in chemicals left and right. I mean, they're all over the place. They're in our food, they're in our water, they're in our clothing, they're everywhere. And again, as I mentioned to you, some of the most dangerous invaders for our system are the antibiotics, pesticides, and chemicals that we get in the foods we eat. So the last thing we want to do is eat a traditional diet and expect our guts to be healthy. I mean, can you imagine what it must be like to expect the intestinal cells in our body to deal with the Chick-fil-A that we had because we were running late and all the toxic chemicals inside of that, or the McDonald's, Taco Bell? Like, I'm not trying to single them out, but like, we know food that's good for us and food that's bad for us. But what I don't think you realize is just once here or there is not okay. Without, singling somebody out, we were at an event over the weekend, and somebody had made mention to me that they're like, well, listen, we eat this way when we have a party or when it's a special occasion. We don't eat this way all the time. And I think they were saying that to me partly because they know who I am and they know what I do, and they're going like, hey, listen, don't judge me. I'm only eating this food because it's this special event. And, in my mind, while that may be okay occasionally, which to me occasionally might be like once or twice a year, not once or twice a week or once or twice a month, I look at that and I say something like, would you ever say to yourself, listen, I only snort cocaine like on a special occasion, and it's just once. Like, I really don't use it any other time except for then, and that's why it's totally okay for me to use this. No, that'd be insane. That'd be ridiculous. But to say something like, I really only eat toxic food on special occasions, or I really only feed my kids dangerous chemicals on special occasions because it's okay just every once in a while, we got to change that mentality. If you take anything that causes damage to your body, even on small amounts, it will irritate the intestines and cause damage. And so we know today that fatty foods, toxic chemicals, processed food products, and even a lot of the plastics and the chemicals we find in the foods that are wrapped in those processes and those products can cause damage. Also, the water we drink is very toxic. Chlorine and fluorine specifically can damage the intestines and cause inflammation. So it may be that we're creating our own health issues. In fact, I know that it is. So the best way for you to fix a leaky gut is to understand where it comes from, because the cause will be the cure when you invert it. What I mean by that is this. We know that a leaky gut is caused by adding things to your diet that cause damage to the intestines. So that would be, for example, alcohol and, grain product foods, processed foods, bad fats, trans fats, etc. So if you want to fix a leaky gut, you're going to need to remove those foods and those factors from your diet. Now, I would call this the 4R approach to repairing a leaky gut. And it would be to remove the foods and the factors that are damaging the intestines. So if it's stress, if it's medication, if it's, processed foods, if it's wheat or grains or something to that effect, we have to get you off of them if we ever have a chance of your body starting to heal. Number two would be, of course, then, if we're going to take these foods out of your diet, it would be to your best advantage to add what you haven't been eating that can help to heal the intestines. And I'll tell you, from my experience, some of the best foods that fix an intestine that has been damaged or leaky is foods that contain healing properties specific to the intestinal cells themselves, some of which can be things like fermented vegetables. Sauerkraut and kimchi and, pickles and things to this effect, they have the ability to have certain bacteria grow within them. So fermented foods would be considered a living food product, because not only do they contain certain organic acids that are very healing to the intestinal wall and help to balance the pH, but they also contain living probiotics. And oftentimes what happens is, in conjunction with a leaky gut, we typically find dysbiosis, which is an inappropriate bacterial relationship in the intestines. Now, if you're at a point in my web broadcast going, wait a second, it's as if you're speaking Greek to me. Like, I get the fact that I want to heal, I don't want to have thyroid conditions anymore. I'm sick and tired of having constipation, fatigue, rheumatoid arthritis, food sensitivities, etc. But this all sounds way too complicated for me to remember in a 45-minute broadcast. Here's what you do then. In the month of November, I'm going to host 2 unique events. They're going to be geared towards the same topic, which is how to fix a leaky gut and have your health come back as a result of that. So we're terming it the Leaky Gut Summit. Basically, it works like this. You can pick, do you want to come out to dinner with me on Tuesday, November 1st, at the Hickory Tavern in the North Lake area and have me explain to you step by step what you can do to fix your intestines. By doing that, you become your own doctor. You heal the intestinal walls and your health gets fixed. If that's you, below this video is a link that you can click and you can come to my Leaky Gut Dinner Seminar. Again, it's on Tuesday, November 1st, 6:30 p.m. at the Hickory Tavern here in the North Lake area of Charlotte. Now, that event can only hold 45 people at it. Once we hit that, every seat in the house is taken. And, of course, this one always fills up, partly because your dinner's included and also because we know many, many people want to get healthy and do it by themselves. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to join me at the Holiday Inn Express and Suites in Charlotte, which is just the opposing following Saturday, which would be on November the 12th. And that's going to be at 11 a.m. Now, I wish I could say dinner's included with that one as well, but this is an 11 a.m. event at a hotel. So this one typically, I've done this event before, has 100 to 150 people at it. And you'll get some special treats if you come to this one. You'll be entered to win some raffle prizes. I'll even give you some printed protocols, just like we do at the dinner. But because dinner's not included, I'm going to reward you with some other great free things. That one is at 11 a.m. on November 12th. And again, if you'd like to come to this one, scroll down even further, and you'll find some registration information for you. Again, all of our events typically sell out for 2 reasons. You guys love to be your own doctors. And, of course, everybody likes to be able to heal themselves and get great information on how to do it without medications and how to become a healer innately. Because really, truly, that's what my show is about. You have the ability to heal yourself if you become your own doctor. And in order to do that, you have to educate yourself on the things your doctors will never tell you about. So what I want to tell you about a leaky gut that your doctor will never tell you is that it's real. It exists. It's not some colloquial term. It's not some things that people just throw around to create some sort of fad diagnosis so we can, start to make money off of people and sell them supplements that don't actually do anything or work. No, leaky gut is real. It exists and it affects so many of us. And when we talk about repairing it, again, it's 4 steps. Remove the foods and the things that are causing damage to the intestines. Replace them with foods that heal. That, again, would be fermented vegetables, cultured dairy. Now, if you've been listening to this show, you heard earlier I said that traditional dairy can damage the intestines and cause a leaky gut because of the hormones and the pesticides, the herbicides, and also a lot of the antibiotics that are found inside of it. But if you get raw cultured dairy, which would be things like kefir or amasi or raw cheese and things to that effect, the probiotic bacteria naturally found in those products can help to heal the leaky gut. So can coconut products, specifically the medium chain triglycerides or the MCTs, the caprylolic acids and the various acids found in coconut products like coconut oil, coconut milk, and even coconut oil are extremely healing for the intestines. In fact, there are several studies that show that the fats found within coconut actually help to soothe, repair, and sort of heal the intestinal lining much faster than any other type of oil. And again, when we talk about oils that are damaging to the body, we're looking at those highly processed oils like canola and corn and the different plant oils that a lot of us unfortunately use thinking that they're healthy. Another thing that can be very helpful food product-wise to help heal the intestines is looking at food products that have high amounts of fat in them, like chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, etc. Many times what a lot of us do is we think seeds are dangerous to the intestines because your gastroenterologist will tell you don't eat small bits and pieces of things that can get stuck within the folds of the intestines. And while that might be true, if you soak a flax seed, a hemp seed, or a chia seed, they turn into sort of this gelatinous pudding that is actually a gel-based because of the fats found within them. So you're sort of activating the seed, getting the fats to come out, and when you eat a sprouted or a soaked chia, flax, hemp seed mixture, you can heal the intestines quite quickly with that. One of my most favorite methods of creating sort of a pudding that will help to heal your intestines is to take coconut milk and then to take chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds, stir them into that coconut milk, let them sit for maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes, and you start to actually get like a pudding. You can add some stevia to it to give it a little extra flavor, some raw cacao powder if you like it to be like a chocolate pudding. And if you consume that on a daily basis, not only does it taste great, acts like a dessert, but it's extremely healing to the intestines. So when we talk about the 4 steps to fix a gut, it's remove the things that cause the damage, replace the foods that you've been eating with these healing foods. Now we want to start to repair and rebalance the various bacteria that's inside the gut. When we talk about repair to the intestines, you have to understand that by itself, innately, your intestines can heal when you stop irritating them. It's almost an analogy, if I could use this for you, as if you had like a wound that scabbed over and you kept popping the scab off, reopening the wound and saying, okay, heal again, pop it off, heal again, pop it off, heal again. That's what sort of happens when you constantly chronically damage the intestines with those sources of leaky gut that we discussed in the beginning of this show. So if you just stop doing that, if you stop irritating the intestines and give your gut a break, naturally by itself, it will begin to repair. But we can assist the process by using some specific nutrients that are known to repair an intestinal damage, one of which is glutamine. Glutamine is actually an amino acid that is very anti-inflammatory and can help the intestinal mucosal lining to regenerate. Think of it like this. It would almost act as if glutamine is kind of like a sealant. So if you have a bunch of small holes in some sort of a balloon or a tire or something you're trying to inflate, you're going to have a really hard time constantly trying to inflate it if those holes are still there. So if you use an analogy like your car tire being flat or slightly deflated, if your alarm goes off in your car every 10, 15, 20 miles that there's not enough air in the tire, and you go pull over at the gas station, spend $1 or $2 and fill all your tires up, and the alarm looks good, there's no lights anymore, it says you're at the right riding pressure, and then 7 days later the alarm goes off again, you fill it up again, 7 days later, back forth, the average person at some point is going to say, there's probably like a nail or a hole that I should fix, plug or replace or repair. Notice the analogy, right? So if we do the same thing for our intestines, we constantly cover up the symptoms by taking medications or by, ignoring it or just by saying, well, it's just some food I ate, it'll pass, I'll be okay. You're never going to actually fix it. So what glutamine does is it's like a plug. You can drink glutamine. It's a powder. You can stir it into water. And what it does is it starts to go in and actually coat the cells to act as a repellent to the irritants and to seal the intestines. Now, the suggested dose is between about 4 to 5 grams of glutamine per day. And you might look at that and go, oh my gosh, that's a lot. But in reality, it's about a teaspoon or 2 stirred into the water that you drink on a daily basis, and off you go. Something else to consider is because we want the food that we eat to be digested properly so that it's not in large particles crossing the membrane and stimulating and aggravating an immune response, why don't you consider taking some digestive enzymes to help to break the foods down to get them into their microscopic components so that the particles and the proteins and the things that are found inside the food are not damaging the wall constantly. One of my most favorite digestive enzymes would be one that's found, we term it Max GI because it's going to help to support the GI system, but it's basically an enzyme that has a lysozyme product that can kill bacteria and viruses. It's got clove, thyme, and oregano oil in it, and it helps to stimulate your gastric juices. So you take this digestive enzyme before you eat. It helps to seal the intestines using the essential oils, and it helps to break the bacteria and damaging parts out with the lysozymes. It also is loaded with probiotics, so what you get is a dual effect. You're helping to heal the gut, you're helping to digest your food, and you're using my next sort of supplemental process to heal the gut, which is essential oils. Now, we know for a fact that there are 3 classic oils that help to repair the intestines, one of which is clove, the other which is thyme, and the third of which is oregano. Now, clove, thyme, and oregano oil do multiple things. One, they soothe an irritated intestine. What I mean by that is they help to decrease the inflammation. Number 2 is oregano oil is very antibacterial. And a lot of times a leaky gut comes hand in hand with a dysbiosis or an overgrowth of certain bacteria that causes more leaky gut. So if we use the oregano oil, we can naturally start to kill out some of the bacteria in the intestines, and that further helps the body to heal the leaky gut. Now, lastly, of course, we mentioned that we want to rebalance the body with probiotics. And the number one way to do this is not to run off to your local health food store and buy either some over-the-counter or refrigerated probiotic. While those are great, most probiotics you find over-the-counter have maybe 4 or 5 strains, if you're lucky, 6 or 7 or 8 strains of bacteria in them. But most of them come from the Acidophilus family. And while Acidophilus is good to have, and while it helps you to have regular bowel movements and good digestive control, in my clinical experience, most people with a leaky gut have too much Acidophilus. They would have like an overgrowth of Acidophilus in the intestines. And partly it comes because, unfortunately, most yogurts and cultured beverages like kefir and things that you find over the counter in your classic grocery stores are using Acidophilus because that's what we think is good for your gut, when in fact there's a whole host of other types of bacteria that are even better than Acidophilus. So the reason I am such a proponent of making your own supplements by fermenting your own vegetables is because you get an entire array of bacteria naturally growing, living, and with their combined organic acids, which help you to have a bigger bang for your buck with probiotics. Now, if you guys have ventured out into the world of probiotics, they can range from like $20, $30 a bottle, as high as sometimes even $70, $80, $90 to $100 a bottle. So I want you to envision this. You spend on average $30 or $40 with probiotics. You take them every day for 90 days, and you're going, yeah, I see some benefit, but I still have my high blood pressure. My blood sugar hasn't changed. My health really hasn't turned around, but my gut feels a little bit better. Okay, that's probably because, again, there's 4 or 5, maybe 8 strains of bacteria in there. Now, just imagine if instead of doing that, you grow your own probiotic bacteria and you eat them in some great tasting foods like, again, sauerkraut and kimchi, kefir or kombucha, all of these great fermented foods. And you also, in addition to that, take a break and let your gut heal. Maybe you do a bone broth fast or a lemon water fast, or you start eating more foods like these sprouted or soaked chia seeds and flax seeds, and you're taking your vegetables and fermenting them and, using coconut oil and coconut products. Just by doing that, most people can start to heal a leaky gut. And when your gut starts to heal, I promise you, we will talk about this on another show and another topic, but there is a direct connection between your leaky gut and your brain function. And what I mean by that is we now know there's something called your gut-brain connection. Basically, in a nutshell, what it means is this. If your intestines are irritated, inflamed, or leaky, you're also going to have massive difficulties with functioning of the brain. So we're talking like concentration, memory, and even into the respects of diseases that affect the brain, again, like depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and even things like Alzheimer's disease and dementia and Parkinson's. So one thing that I see, and I've coached a lot of people through how to repair their intestines and get their health back, is the classic sign that your gut is starting to heal is within 2 to 3 weeks you start going, I'm really focused and I feel really energized, and I've noticed that I'm not stumbling for words. I can remember all of my kids' names. I'm not calling them the wrong ones because that happens all the time, right? I remember where my keys are. It's like all of a sudden I feel 20, 30, 40 years younger. That is the initial response you get when your intestines start to heal. Why? Because your brain starts to function better because your gut brain is starting to get improved. Now, we're looking at maybe 10, 15, maybe 17, 20, 25 days, about a month in, you'll start to notice that your symptoms have started to improve. Your joints don't hurt so much in the morning. You have less fatigue. You're awake during the day, not banging your head against the counter or your desk trying to down coffee to stay awake. You're just naturally energized. I've had some patients even say literally their face clears out, their acne disappears, their hyperactivity, their anxiety decreases. And again, of course, you're going to notice your digestive system improves. Less constipation, less bloating, less diarrhea, less acid reflux, and probably by far the best symptom of your gut getting fixed is you start losing weight. And let's be honest, I think what happens sometimes is a lot of us think it really can't be that easy. Seriously, like most of my conditions, my doctor says, come from my family, my genetics, or just bad luck. I have these conditions because who knows? And you're here, Dr. Ernst, saying that if I just fix my gut, my entire life can change. I can stop taking my medications. I may no longer have these autoimmune diseases that my doctor says are incurable, rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis or even thyroid conditions. And I'll tell you, the science is saying yes. Partly because, again, 80% of your immunity lives in your intestines. So if you have a healthy gut, you have a healthy immunity, and an immune system's job is to fix you, to heal you. So think back to when you were younger, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. Most kids will catch a cold and it'll be gone within 2 or 3 days, if not 24 hours. Most adults, though, we catch a cold and we're lucky if it's 3 or 4 days or it's 3 or 4 weeks before we start to notice our symptoms are improving. Often, to me, that's a sign that your body's immunity is weak, which would, again, be a sign that your gut is starting to fail. Listen, if you're somebody who, again, wants to know, all right, thank you for telling me all about it. I probably definitely have it, but I need some further coaching or some professional advice on how to do this. Guys, that's what we're here for. My dinner seminar in November is on Tuesday, November 1st. It is 6:30 p.m. at the Hickory Tavern here in Northlake. I'm not only going to pay for your food, but I'm going to show you how to heal your gut and make it fast and give you all the protocols step-by-step laid out. We're also hosting it as a seminar on Saturday, November 12th. It's at the Holiday Inn Express here in Charlotte. It starts at 11 a.m. Scroll down below this video. You can find more information on how to actually register for that. And stay tuned each and every week as we continue to come with you great health information so you can heal. This is Dr. Aaron Ernst with the Ask Dr. Ernst Show. I know this is a web broadcast, but guys, we've run out of time for this week. Make sure you tune in each and every week. We're going to be live on WBT, which is 11:10 a.m., Saturdays at 3 o'clock. Starting the 29th again, we should be up and running. If not, of course, we'll come at you each week with our web broadcasts. Don't forget to scroll down below and look for more information and check out our website, which is AskDrErnst.com. We have recipes that will help you to heal your gut. We have protocols, we have health tips, and everything that you need. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.